Our ability to connect with others is such an important part of life. But what do you do when, after a brain injury, your communication skills are affected or your ability to read social cues? It can affect all of our relationships. And today we're going to continue talking about social communication with our next brain injury community panel. There is always hope, and you are not alone. Hi, I'm Cristabelle Braden, and this is my brain injury podcast, Hope Survives. This is an uplifting podcast to bring hope to your darkest days. As a survivor of traumatic brain injury and multiple concussions and re-injuries, I know what it's like to struggle to find hope. I don't want anyone to feel as alone as I did, and that's why over 10 years ago, I started an online community called Hope After Head Injury, which has now launched into a nonprofit organization called Hope Survives. Hope Survives envisions a world in which every survivor of brain injury and every member of their family are seen, loved, heard, valued, supported, uplifted, and never alone. This podcast is an extension of that, and I'd love to invite you to join along as we explore the realities of life with brain injury, with messages of encouragement, interviews with doctors and professionals, and survivor and family stories. No matter where you're at on your journey, there is always hope. With a little hope, you can make it through today. With a little faith, someday you'll get through the pain. Just a little love is enough to light the way through your darkest night. Hope survives. A little faith, a little love. Hope survives. Hey friends, welcome back to Hope Survives podcast. So grateful that you decided to listen and tune in today. After last week's episode on social communication, we got a lot of comments and emails about how much that resonated with you. I'm so glad to hear that I am not alone in that. I'm sorry for all of you who have struggled in this area, but I also hope that these episodes can encourage you to know that you really aren't alone. And there are tools and there are strategies that you can put into place to help to maintain relationships after brain injury. There is a lot of moving parts. There are a lot of moving parts when it comes to social communication after brain injury. Some of it could be from cognitive difficulties, such as our executive functioning, our memory, our overwhelmingness or overstimulation. Maybe there's aphasia or word finding. But some of it can also be from more subtle things, such as when our brains are so overloaded by so many different things, the way that we interact with others can be affected because we don't always understand. Maybe there's an auditory processing issue, or maybe it's simply not being able to pick up on the social cues that the other person is putting out. So, we're going to go a bit deeper into this today when we have our social communication panel with two incredible panelists. Today, I am joined by Hunter Schulz and Elayne Masters, who are both part of our Hope Ambassador team at Hope Survives. We are so grateful for all of our volunteers, and if you are interested in getting involved, we would love to have you be a part of it. You can visit hopesurvives.org to learn all about our programs. We have Rewiring Hope, which is an on-demand video series with Dr. Jeremy Schmo with a live Q&A coming up on September 4th. And we have more, even more coming up. It has been a joy to get to help develop these programs for those with brain injuries and their family members to know that you're not alone. Besides that, we've got support groups going every month. We'd love to have you be part of it. So For today's episode, we are going to go deeper into not just social communication and how we communicate with others, but also how do we maintain relationships and friendships. So I'm so looking forward to sharing this conversation with you with Elayne and Hunter. But before we get there, I want to take a moment to thank our sponsor, the Functional Neurology Center. The FNC's personalized neuro recovery programs offer hope for those suffering from brain injuries, dysautonomia, vestibular, chronic pain, stroke, movement dysfunction, developmental disorders, PPPD, FND, and complex post-concussion. Thank you to the Functional Neurology Center for your generous sponsorship of this podcast. Now, thank you all for listening. And if there's one thing I want you to go into this knowing is you are not alone in all of this. There is hope, and let's just learn how to navigate this together. Stay connected. Email us hi@hopesurvives.org if you'd like to learn more, or even if you just have a comment on this episode. We would love to hear from you. All right, let's get to it. Welcome to the Hope Survives Brain Injury Community Panel. Today we have two amazing panelists with us today, Hunter and Elayne. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, thank you for having me on. I'm really excited.
We are so excited to get to know you both and to share about the topic of social communication and relationships. This is a really big topic for brain injury because it's not always easy. And so I'm really looking forward to this conversation to be able to provide some honesty and hopefully some encouragement for those listening to know that they're not alone in what they're going through. So to start off, can you just share a brief overview of your personal journey with brain injury and what brought you to this panel today? So Hunter, would you share first, and then we'll go to Elayne?
Sure. Yeah. So my name's Hunter. I sustained my brain injury when I was 15 years old. It was a freak accident. It was a spur of the moment thing. I wasn't playing sports. It was just truly just a mishap one day that happened and left me relearning how to walk and speak again. And being 15, it obviously posed a lot of challenges, but I've come a long way, and I actually now compete in pageants with my community service initiative of Let's Talk Beauty and Brains Brain Injury Advocacy. So I speak for this community because I truly want to raise awareness, and I competed for Miss Massachusetts, where I placed top 5 with my community service initiative of brain injury advocacy. So I'm really empowered by this community and look forward to chatting more today.
Thank you so much, Hunter. And Hunter is one of our Hope ambassadors as well. So we're so glad that you are here and representing Hope Survives. And Elayne, why don't you share some of your journey? Now, Elayne and I have known each other for a couple of years now.
We have. Yes, actually, we met when I went to my first BIAPA conference in 2019. I sustained this brain injury, which I would call my most severe, in 2015. I was caring for my mom, end of life. We had her in and out of the hospital with home health care coming in. I was exhausted, and I took a nosedive down my basement stairs late one evening. I don't remember what I was going down there for, but I do remember flying through the air. I remember hitting the right side of the stairwell and then bashing into the left side of the stairwell and coming to in an upside down tangle of limbs, landed on the top of my head at the bottom of the basement stairs. And I say my most severe brain injury because now that I know more about them, I've had more than I'm going to admit here today. I've had so many brain injuries. 3 of them when I was a child into adolescence. And then there were some car accidents. And then there were some other incidences, relationship oriented. And then once you have so many, you do things like you walk into things and you fall and you trip over stuff. And so I've had a lot of them. And the one in 2015 was severe enough that I was incapable of doing a lot of things. I wasn't like you guys were. I wasn't hospitalized, but I lost my ability to read. I lost my ability to use a computer. I couldn't remember to eat. I couldn't remember to drink. I couldn't remember to bathe. Um, and it was when a well-meaning family member said, maybe you should just check yourself into a facility, that I said, that's not going to happen. And I upped the game and somehow found help to provide me with support to fill out forms and get to the places I needed to go to get on a road to recovery. But it took a couple of years. And when I finally learned, um, even though my doctor told me the next day, you have a concussion, it was 2 years before I found out how it was affecting my life and what I needed to do. And at that point, I had been searching all my life for, what is my mission, God? What do you want me to do? How can I use my talents, excuse me, to use what you've given me to help the world? And when I asked the question, is this what you want me to do? Should I be helping other people so they don't have to go through what I have? It was like one of those Kodak moments where the heavens open up and the, choirs are singing. And it was like, yeah. And so that has been my journey. I've been working on brain injury advocacy as the brainy activist and bringing brain injury awareness and support to people in the brain injury community.
Thank you, Elayne. And Elayne's also one of our Hope ambassadors. So we're so glad to have you both as part of Hope Survives. And thank you for your willingness to share your story and to talk about this topic today on this panel. This is not an easy topic to always talk about, especially because, you know, so much of life is relational. And brain injuries, Elayne, my story is somewhat similar to yours in that I've had a lot of re-injuries. And the more brain injuries you have, the easier they are to get and kind of the less people understand. So, we're going to talk a little bit about social communication and kind of symptoms first before we dive into talking more about like relationships um, on another level. So, our first question. Actually, these first two questions are kind of hand in hand, but opposite of each other. So, what I'm going to ask is, how has your brain injury affected the way that you communicate with others or understand social cues? But then the next question is going to be, how's your brain injury affected the way you receive and understand what others are communicating with you? So the first question is like you going out, and the second question would be coming in. Does that make sense? So let's just start with the first one. How has it affected the way that you communicate with others? So Elayne, would you go ahead and start us off this time?
Sure. So it has caused me to have to really stop and be extraordinarily mindful of everything I say and do. Sometimes things don't come out the way I want them to. Sometimes I think people will understand and they don't, and I need to explain. But I need to really sit and process everything that I say verbally, every written communication. I go over it. If something's really important, I will have others review it with me. I'll write a script. I'll role play. I'll have my kind of rehab therapist look at it, or my fiance, or my counselor, because I want to make sure that what I really mean up here is coming out, or what I mean in here in my heart is being conveyed. And that's not always the case. So I have to just be more careful in understanding social cues. Um, I I can tend to maybe be a little oversensitive at times because I don't know why. Um, because I worry because there has been a lot of rejection in my life, and so I worry, what did that person mean, and are they angry at me, and am I understanding the setting correctly, or you know do I need to get some help understanding this? So sometimes I don't get things as much as I'd like to. Um, so what happens then is it's very exhausting. I think you guys will relate to this, that when you have to process everything that you're saying and doing and think it through that carefully, that's like 10 extra steps that other people don't have to go through. So it's a lot of work. And at the end of the day, you get really tired.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing, Elayne. Hunter, how about you? What's been your experience? How has your injury affected the way that you communicate with others?
So there's a lot of the beginning of my journey that I don't remember. So fresh out of brain injury, my memory was impacted. So there's a good chunk of time that I don't recall. But I do know, based on what my mom has told me, that that was one of my biggest challenges was communicating. I had trouble word finding. I had trouble making the sounds. So I had to do speech therapy post brain injury because my body essentially could not figure out how to make the words that I wanted to say. And then if I could find the word, putting the words together was an additional step. So just like Elayne was saying, there's all these steps that the typical person doesn't undergo when trying to communicate with others. And kind of in the depths of my brain injury recovery, when I was going back into the world of things, I recall being so frustrated and feeling defeated because I would know what I wanted to say, but I just couldn't get it out there. Or I would say something and the response from people of confusion didn't make sense because I thought I had delivered this sentence or a statement that made sense when in reality it didn't. It made sense in my brain, but what was coming out wasn't what I thought was coming out. And so frustration was one of those biggest emotions that I felt with that because having people not understand what you're saying, especially when going through such a challenging time where you need to communicate. I was in school at the time, so talking with teachers and trying to tell them, hey, this isn't making sense for me. I need to have this presented to me in a different way, or I'm very behind on the workload that you're giving me because I just am not at the capacity that I was before. I was an honor roll student, so I was in very challenging academic classes. So to go from somebody who was so capable of these things to somebody who needed to work that much harder to accomplish the same thing had teachers confused as well. They didn't know how to handle it. So when I was trying to communicate with them and get the support that I needed, it was challenging and frustrating. So I was lucky to have my mom who would step in and communicate essentially on my behalf because I couldn't get the words out the way I wanted them to. And that frustration component was, I would say, the biggest emotion that I felt during those challenging times.
Thank you, Hunter, so much for
Mhm.
sharing. I can relate to a lot of that because I had my injury as well in school, and I really struggled with friendships. I really struggled with communicating. I also had struggles with slurring my speech and aphasia and finding those words and like saying things that I thought made sense that didn't make sense to others. Over the years, I found that as I've had re injuries and through my journey, the way that I communicate with others, I think one of my bigger challenges has actually been the cognitive overload of like sometimes I can communicate great and then other times it doesn't make sense. And like even, the ebbs and flows of like how tired am I? Did I have enough water? Am I overstimulated? Is there music playing in the background? There are so many factors that go into being able to communicate. If I didn't ever used to be able to go to a restaurant and have a conversation, and that's a big part of like socializing, and people want to meet for coffee and talk, and it's like, or even just like if they want to sit outside, like I can't handle the sun or I can't sit with a window facing me because when the light is overstimulating me, I have trouble with my words because it's like my brain energy is going to like keeping my eyes okay that I can't think of what I'm saying. And so I feel like there's so many factors, and like the inconsistency I think is one of the hardest things to
Mm.
communicate because it's like sometimes you can communicate well and other times not as well. And so I think that affects relationships as well. So let's go into the next part of this question. I'd love to hear what you guys have to add on how your brain injury has affected the way that you receive and understand others, how others communicate with you. So, Elayne, what do you share?
In terms of receiving and understanding communication, a couple challenges occur. One, on top of having a brain injury, a brain concussion, I also had an inner ear concussion. So when I banged off the sides of the stairwell and my head hit the wall, On the left side, the inner ear was damaged, and the part of the nerve that processes sound up into the brain was affected. And so there's the brain damage that causes a slowness in processing to begin with, but there's also the matter of the voices, the words that go into my ear taking a long time to get up there. So for a while, until I learned this, I thought I had a hearing problem, and I had my hearing checked and my hearing was fine. So when I found this out, it was actually kind of a relief that I knew what it was. But someone will say something, and if I ask the person to repeat it and they rephrase it, it's like it's a new thing all over again. So I have to be able to say, would you repeat exactly what you said the way you said it, and share it? Also, you mentioned something about the previous question with aphasia, which is a difficulty getting the words out. If a conversation is overwhelming, so this is kind of the combination of the in and out process. If a conversation is overwhelming or the stimulation has been overwhelming, I get aphasia and I start to stutter and I can't get the words out, and I literally can't make the sounds to say the words. And so that's when, especially if there's a conversation that's very busy or full of a lot of information and I'm trying to get it and it's not going in, and I start I start to stutter. And so getting people to break things down, or instructions, don't give me a long list of to-dos where there's 5 things strung together. Break it down, make it easier steps for me to process. And so sometimes I'll ask to record a conversation so I can go back and make sure, if it's an important meeting, that I got everything. I used to be a writer and an editor, and so communicating was what I did. And again, that process of getting, say, a really dense email or message, and I have to decipher it early on. I couldn't read my mail. I couldn't go through my mail and read it and process it and understand it. I had to have someone come here and read through my mail with me, the writer and editor. Okay, this was my identity, who I was, and I couldn't read a silly letter from the township and understand what I was reading, or fill out a form and know that I was putting the right response in the right box. I would think I got it all right, and then I would get denied something. So someone's trying to convey something to me, and I'm going to have trouble figuring out what to do with it.
Thank you so much for sharing, Elayne. That's so real. You brought up the different sides of verbal communication and written communication, and they are both skills that can be affected by brain injury. Being able to talk face to face or on a phone or a video call, maybe there's auditory processing challenges. um I have trouble comprehending things just audio wise. Like, I often have to watch subtitles on movies cuz like I can't follow the plot if I don't understand what they're saying. And I prefer a video podcast. But now recently podcasts have added transcriptions on their podcasting apps. So like Apple Podcasts or Spotify actually has transcriptions you can watch. And that's so helpful because I have such a hard time just understanding things auditorily. And then also written, right? Like being able to comprehend tone. That's such a hard thing, especially in texting. When my husband and I were dating, we learned very quickly we can't talk about anything serious over text because like it's just hard. I couldn't convey my tone well, and I couldn't understand the tone well. And I think that's kind of a universal human thing, but it's exacerbated by brain injury. So Hunter, I'd love to hear from you. How has your brain injury affected like receiving and understanding in this dynamic of communication?
Yeah, it impacted all aspects of communication. Like we talked about, getting the message out there, but receiving that message. And I think a good way to think about it for me was, what is my brain battling right now? Where am I? Who am I talking to? What else is going on? And in school, it was pencil sharpeners or people walking in and out, and the professor talking, the students talking, someone dropping something that catches my attention. And then that would impact it so much more, right? With what was already challenging was being exacerbated by these other factors that were set forth. And so I call it a brain battle. My brain is battling all these different things and trying its best to take everything in. But when there's that overload of sensory information, it gets harder. And in terms of written or even watching things, I still to this day will go back. I just read a book not that long ago, and I think it was the first time that I was able to actually read an entire book without setting it down and forgetting about it for months at a time. But what I do is I'll read a page and I'll be like, what did I just read? And I go back and I read the same page again because it's that processing. Okay, I read it and I know I just read it, but what did I actually read? Or the same with a show or a video. I can watch it. I'm a big rewinder. Go back 30 seconds. Nope, don't remember hearing or watching that part. Go back some more. Okay, I kind of remember this. Go back 30 seconds. Okay, this is the last point of this video or this show that I actually remember. So I'm a big fan of the rewind button, one of the greatest inventions. And another aspect that I think was interesting, and looking back, I didn't recognize it at the time, but I would constantly say, what? What? But then after I would say what, I would have a delay in understanding what was said to me. So I would say what to people, but then 10 seconds later, I would start answering it before they were even telling me what they had said. And I, at the time, didn't recognize that. But looking back at all those moments where I said what, I think my hearing was impacted. I don't have the best hearing as it is, so I'm maybe not the best judge for that. But yeah, looking back when people would say, hey, can you get me this? And I would say, what? And then I would grab it and I would give it to them. And I'd be like, oh yeah, here it is, even without them having to repeat it, but just that delayed processing. So I got known as the what girl because I'd always be like, wait, what? What'd you say? And then I would just answer it or do what was asked of me, just a little delayed. So that was always kind of a funny part of my story looking back now that I didn't recognize as being something lingering from my brain injury, and something that I still deal with to this day.
Yeah, thank you for sharing. I really appreciate that you said that it was even something you didn't recognize as being from the brain injury, because both of you, beautiful, beautiful women, right? And it's like people can't see it. And so we can't even see it always when we look in the mirror. I mean, I can see my tiredness more than probably other people can, but like when it comes to the like invisible nature of the brain injury, it's kind of hard to, you know, it's kind of hard to understand like, well, what's from the brain injury, being able to even like give yourself that grace of realizing like, hey, if it's a challenging brain day, these kinds of interactions will be challenging. So I just really appreciate you both sharing these social communication things. I want to talk a little bit about friendships and relationships. Have there been times when friendships or relationships were especially challenging, and how did you navigate those moments? So, Hunter, can we start with you this time?
Yeah, sure. So being in high school at the time, there is such a stressor on friendships and relationships and being part of certain groups and having good friends that you can share that experience with. And I missed a bunch of school at the time, but when I finally went back, it was hard because I missed out on a lot of events, even like I couldn't go to the dances that people were having fun at. And my friends didn't fully understand. We were all young. There's not as much known about brain injuries then as there is now, and even less understanding at the time. So trying to explain to them, no, I want to hang out with you and I want to go have fun and I want to be with you guys, but I just can't be in that environment. Or even when it came to communicating, saying, hey, I'm overstimulated today. I can't go hang out, or I can't even go get lunch with you. And then being like, oh, well, what, you don't like me? Like, we had this plan, and having plans change, but also that added stressor of not being able to eloquently say, hey, this is exactly what's happening. This is why I'm feeling this way. And this is why this has to happen. And that kind of nervousness around it too, being young. You don't know how your friends are going to react. We're all just, teenagers trying to have fun and have a good high school experience. So it was definitely a different experience for me than it was my friends, but at the end of the day, the people that stood by me and took the time to understand are the ones that are strong relationships in the long run. And I think if the people who truly support you and are going to be your friends, they're going to take the time to do that.
Thank you for sharing. Elayne, I'd love to hear from you. So, a different season of life, right? When you had your
Yes,
injury. So, would you
very
share with
different.
our listeners?
Yeah. So I sustained the brain injury while I was taking care of my mom end of life. Went to my doctor the next day. He said, yes, you have a concussion, but if you feel dizzy or nauseous, let me know. I didn't feel dizzy or nauseous at all. No nausea, but not dizzy in the traditional sense. So I didn't know what was wrong with me. I thought I was just exhausted from caring for my mom. 6 months after the concussion, my mom died. 3 weeks after that, I got Lyme disease. So, on top of the brain injury, I had all this brain fog and gut stuff going on from the Lyme disease. And I have one sibling. He thought I was being belligerent, that I wouldn't help with after the funeral stuff. I couldn't. He thought I was lying about things. I don't even remember what I said. Um, there were things that I was asked to do that I simply wasn't capable of doing. There were other family members that stepped in to help, and apparently I said I would do some things. And I imagine you guys remember these days when you do stuff, we still have them. You do stuff, and then you do so much that then you can't do anything. And you might not even remember what you were supposed to do. And so I got accused of being a liar. A very close family member went to our home parish's priest and said all these things about me. And I lost my immediate family. I lost my extended family. I lost all the community involved. People were talking about me, and I'm sitting at home crying because I had no one. I have 2 adult children who just have not understood, because I did everything. I was the person who was there for my family and for my friends, and I didn't realize at the time how capable or how smart I was. I just thought it was, this is what everybody does. But I took care of everyone. Someone had a problem, they came to me. I fixed it. And all of a sudden, I can't do anything. I'm like immobilized, I'm paralyzed. And so I think my kids still want to know where their mom is, because she's not that person anymore, you know? And so my relationship with my kids it's been up and down. Right now it's kind of down. Um, and losing the closest people in my family, um, the closest in terms of a relationship. But I have some cousins, um, say 2.5 to 3, who have stuck by me, who call me, who check in with me, and who let me know that they understand and that I matter. And they're far away. I don't get to see them very much at all, um, but I know that somebody understands. And so sometimes we have to let go of the people who choose not to understand or have empathy, and be willing to let those relationships go. Because I think I navigated those circumstances the best I could. I like to live in truth. I put my truth out there. I said, I don't know what's wrong with me, but there's something wrong. I need help. I need, and there's only so much you can say. Things fell on deaf ears, and I had to say, okay, I've got to find a way to live with this and to make the best of the relationships I do have and appreciate them, and let the others go. Um, and if they find their way back, I hope that I can be gracious. But sometimes You know, we have to, with our brain injuries, find a way to protect ourselves, because at the end of the day, if I tear myself down in trying to rebuild a relationship, there's not going to be anything left of me. So, yeah.
Elayne, thank you so much for sharing. I really think so many of our listeners are going to relate to your story. And thank you for being so honest. I mean, that's really what these panels are about. And letting people being able to say, like, hey, we get it. You're not alone in this, you know? And so thank you so much for your honesty and sharing that, because it is hard when everything changes from the brain injury and what we talked about earlier with like the way that we relate, our social skills have changed, but our face may look the same, but then the words coming out of our mouth are not. And it's like, how do we communicate that when we're having trouble understanding it ourselves? And it can definitely cause gaps. And, you know, that's one of the reasons that we started Hope Survives, is we want to provide a way for survivors and their families to be able to form meaningful connections and sustainable relationships. And that's what these panels are about. That's what our groups are about. That's what our programs are about. So I want to ask you guys, are there any strategies that you found helpful for maintaining relationships when communication feels difficult? Hunter, would you share?
I would say one of the biggest ones is taking extra time to just kind of relish in what you're trying to say. So rather than at that beginning stages where I felt that frustration, I would let it kind of knock me down and I'd almost give up on what I was trying to convey. And that hurt relationships too, because I wasn't necessarily getting the message out that I wanted to. So I'd say taking that extra moment of really, using your brain power as hard as it is, even when the tank is, just about empty, really trying to push through and even finding ways to go around what you're trying to say. So if I'm trying to say the bird is blue, I might have to go about it and say the animal that flies that is the same color as the sky, right? You might have to at times find different puzzle piece ways to say what you're trying to say, because you might have one word that is just so stuck and you cannot find it. So finding those synonyms and those puzzle piece words that can go together and mean the same thing. It's like learning a new language at times, right? When you learn a new language, sometimes you can't say things the way that a person who that's their first language would. You have to say it a different way. And I find that for me, that was one of the most useful strategies to get out what I wanted to say, was to kind of go around it. And I'd say a big piece too is finding those people, right? There's going to be some people that will stand by you and support you and take the time to understand. And as if you're listening and you're not somebody that firsthand experienced a brain injury, but you're someone who supports or knows somebody with a brain injury, that is so appreciated as a survivor when you take the time to understand or give us the time to think and really do our best to get the message out there that we're trying to do. So find your people too. It's okay to distance yourself from the people that are maybe adding an additional stressor by not understanding. That's okay. And if at another time it feels right to go back and explain, then you can do that. But I think there's an element of, you have to do what's best for you, and finding those people who will help you through it. And that will help you grow more than getting stuck on, say, the people that maybe don't understand and don't support. And that was my experience with that.
Thank you, Hunter. Yeah, and that reminds me of what Elayne shared too earlier. Like sometimes you have to maybe let some people go, and that's a really hard thing. But for me, I found that helping people understand brain injury has been the best strategy that I could do. And giving people the podcast, right? Like if you're listening to this and you're like, wow, like I have a friend who's trying to be my friend, but I feel like I'm messing up a lot in communication, or maybe they're communicating to me in ways I don't understand, send them this episode or maybe watch it together. You know, there is sorry, I always, when I'm a little brain tired, I mix up my tenses. That's one of my things that like my grammar, my verbal grammar. There are resources out there to help educate the people around you about brain injury. And the more that they can learn about it, I think the more tools that they will have to be able to be part of your life. But it is finding the people that are willing to learn about it. So, Elayne, how about you? How have you found any strategies that are helpful for maintaining relationships when communication feels difficult?
Well, I guess yes and no. What both of you said really resonated with me. And I think that awareness really is a key, but people have to be willing to receive that. So I look at, strategies. Let's say I think of my strategies as broad scoped. So it's hard to necessarily direct those strategies to specific people that you want to convert, shall we say, to understanding brain injury. They may not be willing to. So I just put my message out there globally and hope that in the process, some of them catch it. But some of the things I've tried to do is, okay, if I've said it using my voice and I'm talking and I've explained it to someone, maybe then if I write it. And so I'm having a situation with my son at the time. And last year I tried explaining, didn't get through. I wrote some letters. And what I will say is based on his response to my letters, I didn't express what I wanted to. It just didn't come across I thought I was sending loving messages and he took umbrage and now we're kind of taking a break in conversation. Um, and so where do you go from there? Maybe it's giving people some space and time to absorb or be willing to come back at the conversation in a different point in time. I have a casual friend. I guess we vacillate between casual and more than casual, but um, she doesn't understand why I can't text and have conversations by text, and I can't do it. I just like after the third text, and I'm trying to do something, and my phone's going ding, ding, like just stop. Like I cannot maintain a text conversation. And so, strategies, find different forms of communication and try it with different people. Send a message through something else. I'm really big with my fiance, whom I met at the beginning of COVID. And so he met me after my brain injury. And we we have to try different ways of communicating. So sometimes it's sending a YouTube video. And I think it's a great idea to use this podcast. I will be doing that, Cristabelle. But, sometimes there are YouTube videos that say exactly what you want them to say. Um, I know one of my support groups, a woman posted something about how people with brain injury, people say we're faking it. And her response that I've used again and again is, no, actually, what we're faking is being okay. And so using the messages that other people have and using social media sometimes to extend that message can be helpful. Um, but at the end of the day, if what I try to basically in all of those forms do is stick to my truth, sometimes people don't want to hear the truth. And sometimes they want you to just kind of gloss over it. And some people really don't like the difficult conversations there because they're sticky, they're not fun. And that can result in less authenticity, more of a superficial relationship. And so I think, in a strategy, you kind of have to look at the people that you are dealing with and say, what does this person really want from me? Does this person really want an authentic relationship? And if the answer is yes, then you might put a little more of you into it, a little more effort, and a little more time. But if the answer is, I don't think so, then, you know, the spoon theory where you get so many spoons in a day and when they're gone, well, I've had to really work at this because I want to love everybody, um, but I've had to learn that I can't give all my spoons up to some people.
That's so good, Elayne. And this is a great intro. Our next month's topic is on care, support, and boundaries. So if these things interest you, we're going to have a panel next month on care, support, and boundaries because that's such an important part of relationships and of life, right? Realizing having the people in your life that understand cognitive fatigue. I have had to cancel on the same friend multiple times in the last month, and I feel really bad about it, but I am beyond capacity and I haven't been able to. And thankfully, she understands because I've explained my brain injury. I tell my friends, please double text me, please triple text me. And I use this line a lot, and you guys can steal this line. This is a line I tell them. I say, if I don't respond to your text, it's reflective of my relationship with my phone, not my relationship with you. That's what I tell them. I say, if I don't answer, it's a lot of people attribute forgetting to not caring. But I point blank tell people when I start to become better friends with them, I say, look, if I don't text you back, it's because I'm cognitively overloaded. For me, forgetfulness has nothing to do with if I care or not. I forget about things I really care about all the time. It's a matter of please send me another text. If you haven't heard from me and it's been a couple of days, send me another text. And I tell them, I want you to be annoying. Be annoying because that's the way I'm going to get back to you. And that's how I've been able to maintain a number of my friendships. I have one friend who I met, gosh, over 10 years ago now, and she lives in Canada. I'm in the US, and we met when we were both in Nashville. We're both singer songwriters. And we've maintained a friendship. There has been months that I wouldn't answer her, and she just kept texting me. And she was a bridesmaid in my wedding last year. And I told her, I'm like, girl, the only reason we're still friends is because you kept texting me. Like, there was a period of 6 months when I was having flare ups that I just kept forgetting to answer her, but she just kept coming back. Right. And so it's because I told her, hey, this is my brain injury. Keep texting me. And she was persistent with it. And we've been able to stay good friends. And I have gotten better at responding to her. So, having people that understand there are seasons, but some of my friends weren't that persistent. And in that same time period, we drift apart, and understanding that relationships do drift apart. That's normal for people even without brain injury. So also giving yourself grace in that and realizing everybody has relationships that drift apart. That's a natural part of being human. And we are not meant to hold every single person we've ever met our entire life. The internet makes us think we are. I don't know if that's how God designed us. We just don't have capacity to maintain hundreds and hundreds of friendships. It's just not possible. So anyway, that was a little side rant. My next question for you: have you discovered any unexpected connections or new ways of relating to others since your injury? So, Elayne, let's go to you first here.
So, the brain injury support groups that I participate in have kind of become my lifeblood. And, I have one group in particular. It's just a group of us who had COVID along with brain injury, and then other medical conditions along with brain injury. And we all came from a place where we had a job or a career or a path that we were taking that really mattered to us that we lost, that we're grieving. And so there's kind of a common thread there. While that may not be a requirement of the group, but it's something that's just kind of happened, and we really get each other. And so while I can't say that, we know enough about each other to be best friends, we're definitely really great buddies. And, and there are a couple other groups that I participate in, and just being around other people with brain injury, who live this as well. I started, I think it was a group called Rediscover You that I joined first back in around 2019. And because they were having a Tai Chi class. Um, and it ends up my fiance teaches Tai Chi. So I have my own private instructor now, but that's why I joined it. And I really never expected anything from it. And um, walking into the Brain Injury Association of Pennsylvania's conference in 2023, this blonde woman comes walking at me and she goes, "I know you." And I looked at her and I was like, "I know you." And she was someone from one of the groups. And we have become um, closer over time. And it's just, it's being with your people and people who really, um, who care about you no matter what you're going through and understand the challenges because they live them too. Um, in terms of new ways of relating to others, I guess I'm a lot more careful now. I'm just a lot more cautious stepping into something, and it takes me a long time to get there, and that's okay. That's okay. It's a little harder for me to give my heart away these days than it used to be, but, there are also people out there in the world who don't have brain injuries, who just have big hearts and who are empathetic and kind and caring. And one of the first people to come to my home and help me was someone who volunteered with a community service agency in my area. And this was when I couldn't open my mail. And there were piles of things all over the house. And I had asked for someone to help me go through mail. And she came here the first time and she's like, "I thought I'd come here one day and help you, but it looks like I'm going to have to be back." And she ended up coming back for a couple of years, and she has become one of my closest friends. She had had a slight concussion at some point and had some vertigo, and is mostly healed from all of that, but she she cared, you know, and she saw that I wasn't faking it and that I was really trying. And so there have been a few people like that who've come into my life that have restored my faith in humanity and um, let me know that, you know, there are angels among us. We just can't expect everyone to be one of them. So just appreciate the ones who come our way.
Thank you, Elayne. Thank you for sharing on both sides of that question. So, Hunter, same question to you. Any unexpected connections or new ways of relating to others?
Yeah. So right after my brain injury, when I was kind of back into the world and at a point where I could go about my life to an extent, I didn't like to admit that I had a brain injury that challenged me and that was challenging me every day. It took a very long time for me to open up about it and to talk to people because I think being, 15, 16 at the time, the last thing I wanted to do was admit that I was going through a tough time or that I was struggling or that I wasn't the person that I was before. And I'm not, and I never will be, but I'm okay with that now because I go by if it doesn't challenge you, it doesn't change you, right? And a brain injury presents so many challenges, but you grow, right? It's so challenging. Some days you just want to give up, but you don't. You put one foot in front of the other and you keep on fighting and you keep on going for the better days that lie ahead. And I think one of the amazing things that I found is at Miss Massachusetts, we do a top 5 question. And they asked me what success means, which is one of the pillars of the Miss America organization. And I said, success is not winning or doing well. Success is measured by growth and the refusal to give up. And I said, if it does not challenge you, it does not change you. And when I was at the Teen Massachusetts pageant the day after mine, this woman came up to me. She said, I will never forget that answer. And as a brain injury survivor, that is something that I had to live by because it's so easy to get bogged down and to have that defeating voice in your head saying it's not going to get better, you're not going to go anywhere. But the second that you accept that that's not the truth and you keep going, you keep chasing that glass ceiling that's been put above you, that's when you can connect with people. That is when you can connect with people and share your struggles and share all of the things that make you the person that you are today or at that point in your journey. And so, in terms of communicating, I went to the Brain Injury Association of Massachusetts conference this year. And I went as Miss Blackstone Valley. And so people came up and said, why are you here? And I said, oh, I guess it wasn't apparent because, you see me and I speak okay now. I have my bad brain days, but I was talking to people and engaging with the people in Massachusetts and at this conference. And I said, I'm a brain injury survivor. And people kind of did a double take and like kind of put their head back and looked at me like, what do you mean you're a brain injury survivor? And I go through, yeah, I had to relearn how to walk again and speak again. And all of these challenges set forth in my life have brought me to this moment. And so even from survivor to survivor, I've had ways of communication that I didn't expect, because you think as a survivor that everyone is going to understand, but there's also different brain injuries. Everybody's journey is so incredibly personal and different that what I experienced is not what the person beside me experienced or the person that I spoke with that day or either of you. We all have our own personal challenges to triumph. So communicating with people who, you would maybe think would understand, but then enlightening them that no, that brain injury survivors look like this. It looks like you, it looks like Cristabelle, it looks like me, it looks like all of these amazing people who have gone through something so challenging. But that was just something that I have found very interesting and eye-opening, is that not even all brain injury survivors understand. And it's that aspect of speaking about it and talking about it and being open and honest that people will start to understand. And going forward, we'll have more support for the brain injury community.
Well said, Hunter. Thank you so much. And thank you for being an advocate, both of you, for being advocates for brain injury and sharing your stories. And like I said, it's not easy to be vulnerable like this and to come on a podcast and to also use your cognitive energy. I know both of you set aside time today and you probably mentally rested and prepared to be here. And we thank you for that. So we only have time for one more question. So our last question is a question of advice and hope. If there's one message of hope that you would like to share with survivors and families, what would it be? So, Elayne, how about you share first?
Gosh, that's such a big question. I think it's that you're going to have days and moments and months of isolation and sadness and grief. Our lives have been turned upside down. So it wouldn't really be normal not to have those times. Um, but I think that we can't give in to that. And I mean, there are days when I'm like, okay, I'm done. I'm giving up. That's it. I quit. But at the end, no matter what, I really never quit. I can't. I can't quit. Um, in my world where um, there is a God who is, I believe, loving and good, that I can't give up. I just can't. So even in the darkest of those moments when I'm in the depths of despair, I have to keep going. And what does keeping going look like? It means that sometimes you give people who don't deserve a chance another chance. Sometimes you give a new person an opportunity to come in. Sometimes it's the middle of or the beginning of COVID, and man that your daughter introduced you to virtually knocks on the front door with pizza and beer and wine, and and he's got a blue mask on, and he ends up being your fiance. You don't know what will happen when that door knocks or that phone rings or you walk out there. You don't know. And maybe a lot of the times it's tough stuff, but then when you find those moments that something really beautiful comes into your life, like if you give up hope, if you give up and quit trying, you're not going to get those moments. And those moments can really make the rest of it worth it. And we each as individuals are worthwhile. We are each unique and beautiful and worthwhile. And so we can't give up. If you give up on yourself, who's going to want to not give up on you? We have to keep believing in ourselves. It just we have to. So that's
So well said. I can just feel your heart through those words. And in a all the communication challenges we've talked about, the number one thing is I can feel both of your authenticity, right? And so, despite the brain injury, despite all of that, like your heart shines through. So thank you, Elayne, for what you just shared. Hunter, how about you? What's your message of hope?
Hope survives, but you have to let it. You are the person at the end of the day that is in control of really fighting through and pushing through. And there's a mindset that I think has really helped me. And this has been something that I have lived by since 18, when I really kind of started embracing, okay, this is what happened. And I was a couple years into my journey. And it's think of the challenging moments, not as a roadblock, but merely a detour, right? You're still going to find a way to get to the destination. It just might be a right, a left, a right, as opposed to that straight path, but you're going to get there in your own time. And I think that's another aspect is don't listen to people who say you should be at a certain point or you should be at a certain level of your journey. There's no such thing. I'm a firm believer, and there's no such thing as where you should be, only where you're at now. And where you're at is where you're meant to be. And so, embracing that of, okay, no added pressure of I should be here, I should be there, I should be doing this, and just taking each day as it comes at you and moving forward. And that's okay. And it might be one step forward and 3 steps back, right? You get lost along that detour and you say, wait a minute, I was supposed to take a left, or I have to take a right now to get over here, and all this different stuff. But really embracing every moment of the journey and understanding that those challenging moments are going to change you for the better in the long run. You will be strong, you will come out of it, and hope will survive.
Well said. Wow, that was beautiful, Hunter. Thank you both, Elayne and Hunter, for giving of your time to share today and being part of this panel. It means so much to me personally as both of your developing friends, but friends nonetheless. And as you both being Hope Ambassadors of Hope Survives, I'm really grateful for your willingness to share your story, to be honest. And I know that those listening will find hope. So if people would like to get in touch with you, how would you like to share? Hunter, you want to share yours?
Yeah, people can reach out to me. I have a bunch of Instagrams, but I would say the one that I'm most on is Hunter V Pageantry. So Hunter V as in Victor, Pageantry. I am on Instagram often, so feel free to reach out to me there, and I'll do my best to connect.
Great. How about you, Elayne?
So I am on Instagram, although I'm not terribly active on it these days, but my name on there is Brainy Activist. So it's the word brain, the letter I, and the word activist. And that's probably the best way that someone can reach me.
Great. Thank you both. And as always, for those listening, you can reach out to us at hi@hopesurvives.org. We can also pass a message along to them. If you don't have Instagram, you can email us hi@hopesurvives.org as well at any time. So thank you so much for being part of this. And there is always hope. Bye, everyone.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Thanks for tuning in to Hope Survives podcast. Make sure to subscribe and stay tuned, and would love for you to consider leaving us a rating or a review. Check out hopesurvives.org for more. We'll see you next time, and remember, there is always hope.